the West Coast, Tuesday evening on the East Coast, and Tuesday night in Europe and wherever you are. Hello, hello, and welcome. We've got a very special guest today, my friend Chris Wark. And Chris his story is one that we hope none of you ever have to live through. But if you do, that you need to hear what Chris has to say. And Chris, let's start. If you would please tell us a little about your background and why you're here today, what it is you do.
Well, Dr. Tom, it's a pleasure to see you again. And thanks so much for letting me share my story with your audience. It means a lot. So I was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer when I was 26. Spoiler alert, I didn't die. I'm still alive. And I'm actually 41 today. Not today, but I'm 41.
No, I'm going to start right there. I'm going to ask right now, what kind of symptoms did you have for a few years beforehand?
So I didn't have symptoms for a few years, but I did have them for many months.
Yeah.
So in 2003, I was having abdominal pain. And it was a weird kind of pain that was different than, stomach aching or cramps or anything that I'd ever felt before. And I'd never been sick. I'd never had any significant health problems, never had to take pharmaceutical drugs, So I started getting these weird pains in my abdomen. And I thought, oh, what's going on? Am I getting an ulcer or something? And I put it off because it wasn't debilitating. It was just sort of a nagging pain that would come and go. It was sort of deep and vague. And I had assumed that whatever it was would probably just sort itself out because I believe the body's capable of healing itself. And my body had always healed when I'd hurt myself. And so I just kind of, didn't worry about it. But the pain progressively got worse. And now, in the fall...
Excuse me, you said you believe that the body naturally heals itself, but you were 24.
Right.
Were you thinking like that then?
I was.
Oh, you were. So you had some exposures already to holistic health or something like that. And then if there's a problem, your body will take care of it. You weren't the average 24-year-old that's eating ding-dongs and ho-hos and drinking Coca-Cola. And
so the answer to both of those questions is yes. So I grew up with a mother who was very holistically minded, and she was very different than today's healthy moms. Okay. She wasn't that hardcore, but she did go to little hole in the wall health food stores. She would buy the no sugar peanut butter you had to stir up. She would always have sprouts and kefir and stuff like that in the fridge. Right. So I kind of grew up understanding that. And so, but I was eating the typical American diet. And by the way, my mom took me to McDonald's all the time. Right. So she was very in tune with health, but then she also ate fast food. I don't know. What can I say? Yes. So I was eating a standard American diet, tons of processed food, fast food, junk food, way too much meat and dairy. And anyway, it's having these pains, right? And I'd never had any major health problems, thought my body would sort it out, but the pain progressively got worse. So I eventually went to the doctor and they couldn't figure it out either. And eventually they referred me to a gastroenterologist who said, okay, well, yeah, you got some kind of digestive problem. Let's do a colonoscopy and an endoscope, and we'll see what we can see. They did the colonoscopy, and I woke up from that procedure, and they said, well, you've got a tumor in your colon, and it's about the size of a golf ball. And we took a biopsy. We're going to send it to the lab, and hopefully it's not cancer. And I was like, whoa, man, a golf ball sized tumor in my colon? This is insane. I was 26, actually.
Yeah.
And a day or so later, the phone rings. Doctors calling first thing in the morning. When they call first thing in the morning, it's never good news.
Yeah.
And he calls and he said, hey, we got the biopsy back. You have colon cancer. And we need to get you into surgery right away to get this thing out of you before it spreads and kills you. This was 2 days before Christmas.
Whoa.
And, that was the moment when, basically my life just came to a grinding halt. Yep. I was a real estate investor, entrepreneur. I was a musician in a band, writing songs, making plans to record, making plans to go on tour, Like I had all these great plans and I was really excited about my life. I was a newlywed, I'd been married for just over a year, and like everything just stopped. Like, and all of a sudden now I'm thinking, like, is this like what my life story is? Am I going to be the young guy who died of cancer? Like, I just couldn't believe it. And I asked to postpone the surgery because like being in the hospital on Christmas, is there anything more depressing?
Yeah.
So they said, yeah, we can postpone it till December 30th. So I go in on December 30th. It was supposed to have laparoscopic surgery where they just cut a couple small incisions, put a camera in there and put the instruments in, and then do it with minimal scarring and minimal and very fast recovery time. But as soon as he put the camera in, he had to look around and he said, this doesn't look good. So he opted to just cut me open, old school style, and took out a third of my large intestine, took out the tumor, took out my appendix, took out a bunch of lymph nodes that were obviously cancerous, and in order to get clear margins. And I woke up from surgery. They said, hey, listen, it's worse than we thought. You're stage 3C colon cancer. You're going to need 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy. So at that point, it's like, oh man, like it's going from bad to worse, right?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, I guess this is my life. I guess I'm just a full-blown cancer patient. And it's important to note that I'd never seen anyone, I didn't know anyone, that had ever gone through cancer before. No one close to me. So I'd never had a mom, a brother, sister, best friend. Like I'd never had anyone in my life that had gone through cancer. So I didn't have like first-person experience with the disease or with treatment. But I had seen people out there in the world who are obviously late-stage cancer patients, right? And they're emaciated, their skin's yellow, they have no hair, they're wearing a mask over their face. And those are some images when you see people like that, like it stays with you, right? I mean, it's to see a human in that condition is disturbing, right? And not to be derogatory towards a sick person, but it really is. It's like profoundly disturbing. Like, oh my gosh,
yes. Like
I can't imagine what this is like to be in this condition. And so now I'm thinking I'm going to find out, like that might be me very soon. And that was pretty scary. So at that point, I just assumed like, okay, this is my life. I guess that's my future. But a couple of things happened in the hospital that started me thinking a little differently. The first thing that happened was the very first meal that they served me. The very first meal. Would you like to guess what the first meal was?
I would think it would be Jell-O.
Okay, that's good. But Jell-O was the side item. So what was the main course? What was the entree?
A steak.
Good guess. Worse than a steak. Like you might eat a steak. Steak might be something that you would order at a restaurant. So the clue is you've never ordered this at a restaurant.
Oh my God. Let's see. What have I never ordered in the restaurant? I'm at a loss, Chris.
Sloppy Joe.
Oh, I love Sloppy Joes.
As a kid.
I grew up on them as a kid.
In the school lunch line, right? It's summer camp.
You bet.
Yeah. So that's about the only place you can get them besides prison or the military, right? Yes. Little did I know, they also serve them to sick people, cancer patients in the hospital as the first meal.
Oh my.
After they cut out a third of your large intestine.
Oh my gosh. Oh, on so many cases, in so many ways, that is just wrong.
It's wrong.
Just wrong.
It should be against the law.
It should be against the law. That is terrible.
So anyway, they put this tray in front of me, cafeteria tray, Sloppy Joe on it, some Jell-O, and there might have been some applesauce. And yeah, I just remember thinking like, ugh, like gross, why are they serving this? This is terrible. And I was really hungry. I hadn't eaten in a couple of days. So I did eat it. Okay. But it was just like, man, why is there such a disconnect between healthcare and healthy food, right? And health food. I knew what health food looked like. I knew I understood there was a category of food called health food. I actually worked at a Wild Oats before they got bought by Whole Foods. I worked at a Wild Oats market in college, for like a year and a half. So I was around organic food, healthy food. Like I knew what it was. And I was shocked that hospitals were serving such terrible food. And now we know hospitals are notorious for serving horrible food. I mean, like hospital food, it's a thing, right? Everybody knows it's terrible. But I didn't know it was that bad until they served it to me. So the next thing that happened in the hospital was the day I was supposed to leave, the surgeon comes in, we're having a conversation about like what's next. And I asked him, I said, is there any food I need to eat or avoid? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, I want to help myself, right? I want to eat instinctively. I was just thinking like, I want to eat food that'll help me, heal, maybe help me heal faster. Or I want to avoid food that might screw up the surgery. Like, is hot sauce off limits or, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And his response to that question was, no, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer.
Unfortunately, yeah, there's no guidance there. There's no guidance whatsoever.
Nope.
I've got to do a shout out, Chris, in the middle of this. Brian in Leduc, Canada, Sylvia in Barcelona. John Wogalski, thanks so much for your comments about the GMO. Misty's in the house. Hi, Misty. Folks, as you're listening to this, send us some of those emoji things, the shock ones or thumbs up. Chris is talking about what happened in his life here, and it's pretty remarkable. All right, Chris, thanks. Let's continue.
Yeah. And I'll just say, before we get too far into it, we should let people know, I did heal myself, and I have a course that is airing free for the next 10 days on the internet. And there's probably a link above the video or below the video. I think we'll post it. But anybody watching, if they want to go through my course for free on healing cancer with nutrition and natural non-toxic methods, go through it. It's absolutely free for the next 10 days. So go check it out. Okay, so back to the story. My surgeon had no clue, right? Had no input on nutrition. I was surprised by that, considering he was an abdominal surgeon. I thought he would, maybe have some expertise on gut health or something, right?
Right. No. Of course, most people would think that, but what we learned, of course, is that a surgeon, you want the best surgeon because he's really good at surgery, and he doesn't know anything at all about anything else. Or if he does, it's peripheral. And these guys, to stay on top of what they do, they focus and they dedicate all their time to be the best surgeon they can be. But they're a doctor. And so we think, given that they're a doctor, they're going to know about everything related to health. And it's just not fair to ask them that. It's just not fair. But as a scared 24-year-old or 26-year-old, it's rational that you would ask that question of the doctor that just saved your life. Yep.
So I went home. I'm recovering from surgery. I'm thinking about my life and my future, and what the next 12 months of my life was going to look like as a full-blown cancer patient, chemo patient. And the idea of chemotherapy, the idea of poisoning my way back to health, did not resonate with me. It didn't make sense to me. Now, for other people, it may make sense, and that's fine. But for me, I was just wrestling with it, man. I couldn't get past it, and I couldn't get over it. And my instincts, my intuition, my gut were telling me, like, this is not for you, right? Like, don't do this. Like, my survival instinct, right, had taken over, and I had this internal resistance, and it was strong. And remember, I've never had anybody go through cancer in my life. Yeah. So it's not like I saw what happened to so-and-so and I don't want to do that. It was just something in me was like, no, but I didn't know what else to do. And so my wife and I prayed about it. And I was just like, God, if there's another way besides chemotherapy, please show me. It was just a simple prayer I just humbled myself and reached out and asked for help. And we were Christians, so it wasn't weird for us to pray or anything. But I'd like to say right there, Chris, for those in the audience that are not Christian,
that I'm very similar in that, sometimes I'll just say, I need some help here. Please, if you can. I'm trying to live a good life, and I just need some help here. So you don't have to be a Christian and be really focused and have a belief system to ask the higher sources, whatever they are, for some help. You live a good life, you pay it forward every way you can, whenever you can, and it's okay to ask for help.
Definitely ask for help. So that's what I did. And 2 days later, a book shows up on my doorstep. And this book was mailed to me from a man in Alaska who knew my dad. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. And I start reading the book, and I learn that the man who wrote it had been diagnosed with colon cancer, had refused conventional treatment, had radically changed his diet and his life, and his body healed. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I could not believe this book showed up. I prayed, I asked for something, this showed up. I was like, this is it. This is my miracle right here. Like, I asked for something, I got something. This is what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to do exactly what this guy did. Yeah. And so what he did was a raw food diet, raw foods and juicing. And, it only took one person, one testimonial to spark enough hope in me to believe that healing was possible. And
it must have made sense for you when you read it. It must have made sense.
Yeah, it did make sense. I'll tell you why. It made sense because there was a few, I'd say, epiphanies that I had, okay, that made sense. One was, the way I'm living is killing me. Yeah.
Could you say that again?
The way I'm living is killing me.
Did you hear that, everyone? One more time, Chris.
The way I'm living is killing me.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And this is personal responsibility, right? I'm realizing, wait a second, maybe I'm poisoning and polluting my body with food that it's not meant to eat, right? Maybe the reason I'm sick, and we know now that so many chronic Western diseases are caused by diet and lifestyle. Maybe the reason I'm sick is because I've been making some really bad choices. And I didn't feel ashamed or, guilt or any of that kind of thing. It was actually empowering. Because I realized, whoa, wait a second. If I'm contributing to my disease, if I'm causing my disease, then maybe I can reverse it. Maybe I can change what I'm doing and empower my body to heal. So that was a huge light bulb for me, right? Yes. The other light bulb was, again, being a Christian, I believe that God made the earth for us and that everything we need comes from the earth. So I'm like, well, okay, what if I go back to a diet of just simple food from the earth, fruits and vegetables? Right? Just straight from the earth, organic. And the idea of a raw food diet was also really intriguing to me because it was like sort of the simplicity and the purity of it, of like, it's just coming straight out of the ground, wash it off and like eat it, right? Like no cooking, nothing, right? It's like as pure as you can get. And so I was really fascinated by that. I'd never heard of the raw food diet. This was January 2004. I mean, there weren't people on the internet like what I would call like hot, sexy Instagrammers, right? In bikinis talking about the raw food diet, like showing, me in a bikini with like a watermelon, like, like, or I'm having for lunch. Like that stuff wasn't happening, right? Right. There was no Facebook, no YouTube, no Instagram. The internet in 2004 was kind of terrible. It was all text.
Well, Chris, I've got a question for you. So it's 2018 now. Can we see you in a bikini?
Can you give me a minute?
Sure.
I'll go borrow one of my wife's.
Okay.
So I'm fascinated by the raw food diet. I believe this is an answer to prayer. I'm like, this is it. This showed up. I'm doing it. So overnight, I'm like, actually before the next day, I'm reading the book. I'm on the couch in tears, man. I'm on the couch in tears, choked up, just saying a prayer of like thanksgiving, right? Just like, thank you for bringing this into my life. Like, I know this is what I got to do and I got to change my life. And so I called my wife and I was like really excited. I was trying to explain, like, I got this book and you're not going to believe this. And like, where can we find a juicer? And we got to, and like, I'm going to do this raw food diet. And she thought I lost my mind. Okay.
Yes.
She was really concerned that I had lost my mind. And 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 I was even like, I don't think I want to do chemotherapy. And so we get off the phone, other family members start calling almost immediately. And they're saying, we heard you're thinking about not doing chemo. And you need to understand that you've got to do what the doctor says, that don't you think if there was something better, they would know about it? And I know somebody that tried alternative therapies and they died. And I'm like, whoa, like
Yes.
what's happening right now?
Yes.
All of a sudden, like I was so excited about this, like, answered in prayer and like all this information and all these revelations I was having, and things seemed to be just like falling into place, to help me. And then everybody around me is saying, no, don't do that. That's wrong. That's a mistake. You're being stubborn. You're being foolish.
What's the matter with you?
Yeah. And I'm like, and by the way, these people love me. They weren't against me, right?
Right.
But they didn't understand. And they thought literally I was making a mistake that was going to end up like killing me.
How many people out there have had that kind of experience as you're trying new health habits or trying something new, where your loved ones, your family, give me some thumbs up if you've done that and if you've had that experience that Chris is talking about.
I think a lot of people will. A lot of people can relate to this, right?
You bet.
Anytime you make a massive life change, it really inspires criticism and jealousy and lots of negativity and naysayers in your life.
Yes.
And so it's really important to surround yourself with people that are positive, that support you. If you're trying to do something, if you're trying to take what I call massive action, right, and change and do something, significant in your life, you need support. So it was really tough in that initial first, bit of time, because I realized, gosh, I may have to do this alone because everybody thinks I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
But to me, I wasn't in denial. I wasn't like chasing after some fantasy. In my core, I was like, I am doing this to survive. Like, I think this is my best chance for survival and healing. This is why I need to do this. And I was excited to see what would happen to my body if I radically changed my diet. So I jumped on board right away. There was, even though people were telling me it was crazy, I was like, I'm doing it. I don't care. I'm doing this. I want to live. I'm going to live, and I'm going to figure this out. So I started, but there was a lot of pressure from people around me. So in order to appease those people, I was like, I reluctantly agreed to go see the oncologist. And we go to the cancer clinic, and man, the waiting room's packed. It's full of people who are 2 to 3 times my age. I'm 26. I've got a handlebar mustache, shaggy hair, like I'm a rock dude. And I'm looking around and everybody's 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And it was like, man, it was depressing. And I just felt like I don't belong here. Like, I can't believe I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, 26-year-olds don't get colon cancer.
Right. Right.
Except now they do. You see,
they do.
It's one of the fastest growing segments of cancer is young adult colon cancer, which is caused by our diet. I'll come back to that when we talk more about gut health and things. So I'm in there. This is the amazing thing. Several things. This was such a key pivotal moment in my whole journey, was this cancer clinic experience. We're in the waiting room, sitting on the couch, waiting to go back, watching the TV. It's one of the morning shows, and out comes Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne comes out. You love Jack LaLanne. He comes out, he starts going off about nutrition. And he's like, we're all so sick because we're eating all this man-made processed food and junk food. And we need to go back to eating fruits and vegetables and juicing. And if man made it, don't eat it. And I'm like, I can't believe this is on in the exact moment.
Right.
In the cancer clinic, right?
Right.
It was a mini miracle. I'm like,
it was a message.
It was a message, right? It was like, just another confirmatory message, right? That like,
yes,
this is what you need to be doing. Like, I'm just reminding you, little did I know I was about to go into like the pit of despair, man. I was about to walk through some doors and have like a really, really terrible encounter.
Yes.
And so they call our name, we go back, the oncologist comes in, and he's, just very matter of fact about my situation. And he's like, look, you're 26 years old. You've got stage 3 colon cancer. It's very aggressive in young adults. We're going to give you a chemotherapy treatment, which is 5-FU and leucovorin. And you've got about a 60% chance of living 5 years with treatment. And I'm like, 60%.
How many years ago was that?
This was 2004.
2004.
January.
14 years ago.
Yeah.
Follow our treatment and you've got a 60% chance of living 5 years.
Living 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, man, I'm thinking, didn't say it out loud, but I'm thinking that's not very encouraging. And 60% is like pretty close to 50%. That's like a coin toss.
Yeah.
So, it's almost like half of the people that do this is not even going to help them. And which group am I going to be in?
Yeah.
So during the conversation, I said, well, okay, what about the raw food diet? Because I was on it. I'd been on it for a week. I was actually feeling really good. And I was excited about it. And he said, no, you can't do that. It'll fight the chemo. And I'm like, what does that mean? Yeah. Right? I didn't ask him what it meant. I learned later that there's a sort of an outdated theory, which is called that cancer patients need to be on a neutropenic diet. Neutropenic means it's all cooked because they're afraid chemotherapy destroys your immune system. And they're afraid that if you eat an apple or, watermelon or raw broccoli, that there's bacteria on that piece of food that could cause a problem in your body because your immune system's been decimated.
Right.
So that's what he meant by that. And then I said, well, are there any alternative therapies available? And he said, no, if you don't do chemotherapy, you're insane.
And your wife is hearing this.
Yeah, she's
Mm-hmm.
hearing it too.
Mm-hmm.
And from then on in the conversation, he basically shifted into a more aggressive stance and tone and was talking down to me and doing everything he could do and saying everything he could say to convince me to do chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. And the message was pretty clear. If you don't do this, you're going to die. Mm-hmm. As you know, when you're fearful, when you're anxious, when you're afraid, you kind of go into tunnel vision, right? The stress hormones are pumping and he's talking to me and I'm not even hearing what he's saying. I just wanted to run out the door. It was the stress and the fear was palpable. And unfortunately, this is what happens to most cancer patients when they're at the cancer clinic. It's a fear factory.
Absolutely.
A lot of doctors use fear to manipulate and motivate patients to do exactly what they say. Before the patient has time to really think and read and research and understand their disease, understand their situation, evaluate their options, right? They're rushed into treatment before they know what they're getting into. And I've talked to hundreds of cancer patients, hundreds and hundreds, and I can't tell you how many times they've said, I wish I knew then what I know now. I would have made different decisions. Yeah. And so again, I'm not against anti-cancer treatment, but I am critical of the industry because they rush people in before they know what they're getting into.
Agreed.
And so there I was sitting in this oncology clinic. He's talking me into chemo. And after our meeting ended, I got up and just like I'd been hypnotized, I went straight to the desk and made an appointment to get a port put in to start chemo in a few weeks. And then my wife and I walked out to her car and sat in her car, and I was just completely shattered, man. I mean, I was afraid. My faith was shattered. I was discouraged. I was depressed. We held hands in her car and we prayed together, and I choked out a prayer and cried, I mean, I didn't know what else. It was just a very low point, very low point. Emotionally, it was very difficult because I'd walked into that clinic confident and feeling good, and I walked out terrified. Yeah. Another thing that I want to mention that doctors often do, oncologists often do, that I think is so tragic and along the lines of serving a sloppy Joe, right, is when a cancer patient goes in to see a doctor, the first question on their mind is always like, why did I get cancer? Like, how did this happen? Why did I get it? What caused this? And many of them ask the doctors, and you know what the doctors tell them? They say, oh, well, it's nothing you did. It's just bad luck.
Two genes.
Might be genetic.
Right.
And that is the worst. It's what I consider borderline medical criminal negligence. Because, when you tell a patient that nothing they did contributed to their disease, you know what that means? That means there's nothing they can do to help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They become a powerless victim.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing they can do to help themselves, their only hope, is to show up for treatment. That's it. And they even go a step further.
Which is exactly what you went through when you walked out to the car. Powerless.
Yeah. And they go a step further because they tell them, go home and eat whatever you want.
Right.
We want you to eat high calorie food. They'll even send them home with a list of foods, recommended foods. You can find these all over the internet from cancer hospitals. Recommended lists of foods, milkshakes, pizza, burgers, ice cream. They want you to eat high calorie food so you don't lose too much weight during the chemo.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's absolutely criminally negligent in my mind. So anyway, that's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I just want your viewers and listeners, and some of the people watching this have already heard this. They've heard, the doctors have told them this.
They've heard it.
Yeah. But the truth is, you're not powerless. You're not a victim. And the reason why that's so negligent is because we know that the number one cause of cancer is smoking. That's the number one cause, right? That's not bad luck. That's not genetic. That's your choices, right? That's your choices. The number two cause of cancer is obesity. It's not bad luck. It's not genetics. It's your choices. And that may be hard for some people to hear, but that really is the truth. That's not Chris's weird idea. That's from the National Institutes of Health, the National Cancer Institute, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, World Health Organization. All of the governing bodies in the world of cancer science and research agree. So our choices matter, but doctors don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And A, and B, they're afraid. Not afraid. They don't believe that a patient's going to take their advice anyway. Well, they're not going to quit smoking anyway. Well, they're not going to change their diet anyway. What's the point? Right?
Well, that's true. And they also don't know what to say because they don't have training in nutrition. They just don't know.
That's correct.
When I was the president of the Chiropractic Society in Chicago, the licensing board for the state of Illinois is the medical licensing board is for medical, osteopathic, and chiropractic. And so we pushed, the chiropractors, we pushed to require one course in nutrition to qualify to sit for the licensing exam in chiropractic, in osteopathy, and in medicine. And they fought us because they didn't want to do it. It would mean that applicants would have to postpone taking the exam because they hadn't had a course in nutrition in medical school. So they'd have to make sure to take a course to be able to sit for the licensing exam. And that's an important component for people to know. We expect if they're a doctor, they know everything about everything. And that's just not true. They've got areas, we've all have areas of expertise. And we just have to know, and you really need a healthcare team, not just one doctor, a healthcare team.
That's great advice. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That's the reality is the doctors aren't trained in nutrition. It's not a part of med school education. They're trained in human anatomy. They're trained in pharmaceutical drugs. They're trained in surgical procedures, but they're not trained in nutrition or prevention because there's no money in preventing disease. Right. And there's no money in treating disease with diet and lifestyle interventions, right? When I say no money, it's no money, relatively speaking, to $billion drug industry, right?
Right. Right.
So there are plant-based MDs, there are nutritionally based MDs out there that are making a living, right? Treating people with nutrition, and they're happy and they're doing what they're passionate about. So it is possible. And the exciting thing is there's more nutritionally based MDs today than there ever have been in U.S. history anyway,
exactly,
or at least in the last 100 years.
Exactly right.
So anyway, things are getting better. Okay, but at that moment, I was faced with this scary reality that everyone around me, including my doctors, including the surgeon, when I did a follow-up with him, told me, you've got to do chemotherapy. This is your only hope at survival. If you don't, you're crazy. And I was fortunate to have a few weeks between that appointment and when I was supposed to start chemo, because I was still recovering from surgery. And so during that time, man, I just went home, I fired up the juicer, right? I just got after it. I was like, well, I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to keep, I was still excited about nutrition and healing and fruits and vegetables. I was like, man, I'm just going to keep putting it in my body. I'm just going to keep helping myself. And every day, as that chemo date crept closer and closer, the anxiety was just building and building. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I consulted, I talked with other people. I was trying to get advice and trying to make a wise decision. And when the day came to start chemo, I woke up, or to get the port put in, right? I woke up and I just realized, you know what? I'm not doing it. I'm not going, right? I'm skipping the appointment. And I thought they'd leave me alone after that, but little did I know, they weren't going to let me get away that easy.
Oh no, man, this is like income.
Yes. The average cancer patient is worth over 300,000 in revenue. And you think about surgery, chemo, radiation treatments, breast reconstruction, wigs, nipple tattoos. I mean, it's crazy, right? All the ancillary pharmaceutical drugs that they give you to help with the nausea and help with the side effects of chemo. I mean, it's just a massive, massive industry. Okay. So as you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I didn't show up and they started calling my house and leaving messages, and they eventually sent me a certified letter. And that was like the last effort. I had to sign for it. So they had proof that they contacted me.
Yes.
And, but I resisted, I was like, I'm just, you know what? I am going to live or die on my own terms.
And where was your wife at that point in the conversation?
So she was struggling. She was struggling because
that's important to talk about. That's important for everybody out there.
Her family was very conventionally minded, right? They would just go to the doctor for everything, right? They would go get a prescription for everything, kind of thing. Yeah. And they were very conventionally minded. And my mom was a kind of a health nut. And I grew up in more of a holistically minded household. And like, I went to the chiropractor, right? My mom went to the chiropractor. I went to a chiropractor growing up. So like, I understood that world, not the depths of it, but I definitely loved the idea of supporting the body's ability to heal itself. Right. Instead of treating disease with a pharmaceutical drug, which doesn't cure it, doesn't solve the problem. It just, helps alleviate the symptoms.
I would just like to stay on this point for a minute, Chris, and that is your primary support system, your partner and you guys are in love and you pray together, and she, in expressing her concern for you, was struggling. But you had to have the courage to continue with what made sense to you, not being fanatical, but what made sense to you, and continue in this direction. Yeah. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but in my core, I realized no one understands, but I'm doing this because I want to live. And she and I even, got into some heated discussions, right, about this. And I flipped overnight. Right? I became obsessed with health and healing and nutrition and raw foods and juicing. Like, I'm doing this, baby. Yes. And I was trying to drag her along, and I was trying to sort of evangelize her, right? Like, come on, let's do that. Like, I was excited. And she said to me, and this was really hard. She said, I don't like the person you're becoming. Yeah. And I thought, oh man, that was, I mean, I said something to the effect of, I need you to understand I'm doing this to live. Right? Yeah. I'm doing this to live. Excuse me. So things were tense, but excuse me. No, that's right, man. This is hard stuff to say. Yeah. It's hard to say this. So I got choked up and like I got a tickle in my throat at the same time. Okay. So, but that appointment with the oncologist, that's when her attitude started to change, because she saw the way they treated me.
in the way he treated us, right?
Yes.
And the weird things he said. He even said something else that I forgot to mention was in the middle of his diatribe. He said, "Look, I'm not telling you this because I need your business." What does that tell you, right?
Yeah, right. He needs your business.
Yeah.
Right.
So I found a naturopathic doctor who connected me with sort of like an underground integrative oncologist who was in his 70s, who had come out of retirement and had spent a lifetime as a traditional oncologist and started incorporating IV vitamin C and other non-toxic, but not FDA approved therapies, because he just wanted to try to find a solution, to find a way to help people, right? Help them boost their immune system. He really understood, and even wrote a letter to my naturopath. They were communicating back and forth. He wrote a letter just about how important boosting my immune system was and how concerned he was with doing that, and how the outlook for me was grim. So he really thought it's coming back and it's going to be rough for this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I built a support system, like you just said, mentioning I found a team of people that could support me. And I got to give credit to my mom too, because my mom was the first person who actually did support me. And she had a stack of books that was like another miracle in my life. She had all the books by Paul Bragg. She had Pablo Areola. She had books by Al Carter, about rebounding. She had all these books from the 70s and 80s about health and healing and alternative cancer treatments, alternative medicine, herbs. She had stacks and stacks of books, man. And it was like, I'd never paid attention to any of these books, but my mom was just a voracious reader. She was just like, loved to learn, right? She's just a lifelong learner. And it just, just always reading something. And little did I know, she'd been saving up all these books for me.
Yeah.
And so that was amazing, right? I was just like, oh, wow. So every time I would read a book and then I would find out about some other health influencer or author or something, I'd be like, hey, have you ever heard of so-and-so? She's like, oh yeah, I've got their book. I'm like, are you serious? I mean, over and over and over. Books on raw food, it's just crazy. So my mom and a naturopath and an integrative MD oncologist, and even my wife, came alongside me to support me. It didn't take too long, even though she wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna be a raw foodist too, right? But she just saw how awfully they treated me, and it definitely put a bad taste in her mouth. But she was also afraid for me, afraid I was gonna die. And I just want to say, what probably gets me more emotional than anything is I wanted to be a dad. Yeah. When you're confronted with a life-threatening disease and you realize I could be dead in 5 years or 5 to 10 years, that could be it for me.
Yeah. Then
you kind of want to get busy living, right? Like you want to, and I had always thought like, yeah, I want to have kids. I want to be a dad, And so I had a conversation with my wife about it. And I said, hey, what do you think about starting a family? And she made what I think is one of the most courageous decisions of anybody I know personally. And she said, yes.
Can you imagine, for people who are here with us, can you imagine if you're that woman and your husband is been told he's going to die if he doesn't do a protocol, and he's going to die, and if he does the protocol, he's got a 60% chance of living for 5 years, and now he's saying that he wants to start a family with you. So what would that be like for your partner? What would that be like? There was Kristen wrote here, my husband said the same to me when I started my journey earlier this year and still isn't on board. I'm sorry, I know it's hard. So that's why I'm pausing your story, Chris, is to validate the people out there who are going through the same kind of thing, that the people you love who just don't understand, they just don't get it, and they're trying to express their love for you and saying, don't be crazy, do what the doctor says. But now here we are, Chris is telling his wife he'd like to start a family.
She said yes.
Yeah.
So we started trying to get pregnant, and she got pregnant like right away. And so now I had something else to live for, you know. In the beginning, and this is so important for cancer patients, is you got to ask yourself, do I want to live? Right? Do I want to live? And what do I have to live for?
Yeah.
So important. So important. And for me in the beginning, I had two things to live for, really three, but my mom and dad, that's two people, and my wife. I'm an only child. So like the idea, the thought of my parents burying their only child, you know, in his 20s was just so painful. Like I just couldn't bear the thought of that. I couldn't bear the thought of my wife standing beside them at my graveside, burying me. I mean, we'd been together 6 years, married for 2. And I was like, I've got to live for these people. Yeah. And then now we've got a baby on the way. So I got something else to live for.
Yeah, yeah. And let me make a comment here. For those of you whose mind just did this yabba, 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 where because Chris said, it's important to ask the question, do you want to live? People will say, oh, of course I do. Of course I do. Then why would you ever eat another Twinkie? Why would you ever do anything in your life that would threaten your health and well-being, especially when you're on a tight string of health? You've been diagnosed with a disease, and yeah, of course I want to live is the easy answer. But if you really get down in your heart and soul and you say, yes, I want to live, how much do you want to live? Well, I really 100%, 150%. All right. Then you find the program that you think is right for you, like Chris's program. For those that came late here, there's a link down there. You can click on it. He's giving his whole program for free to 10 sessions to do this thing. You watch that. And if it makes sense to you and you say, I'm going to do this thing, you do it. You say, I'll do this thing for a month, you know, but you don't, well, I'll kind of do it. You know, it's like the people that say to me, well, you can have a little gluten once in a while. Well, no, you can't. You know, if you talk to science, no, you can't. So if you want to live, you really gotta like own that. All right, thanks, Chris. Please continue.
Man, you're speaking my language. Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Lots of people will say, I want to live. Of course I want to live. Then you've got to stop killing yourself. Yeah. Right? You're a cancer patient and you're smoking. You got to put the cigarettes down. Yeah. Right? And yeah. I realized, like I said in the beginning, the way I was living was killing me. It wasn't just my diet. I mean, my thoughts, my attitude, my emotional life, I was a wreck, man. I hated myself. I really did. Even though I was a good person and I was a Christian and trying to live a good life, I struggled with insecurity and having a critical and judgmental spirit. And I was carrying a lot of envy and jealousy. Not carrying, but I was prone to it. Because I'm an only child, like I'm type A and very competitive. And I just was a swirling ball of negativity. I was a mess mentally, and I was secretly killing myself. Yeah. And so it's a powerful revelation to have, right? And again, not to beat up anybody or blame you or shame you if you're smoking or if you're overweight or whatever. But the great news is you can change. Like the choices you make every single day promote health or disease.
Let me ask you, were you conscious that you hated yourself?
I was once I was honest with myself. I was.
Once you were honest, but as you were living that lifestyle, you had no clue that was an underlying dynamic as to why you were doing the lifestyle you were doing.
It was, yeah, it wasn't like I hate myself, therefore I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But I struggled with deep insecurity, like I said, and a lot of negative emotions, and it was all really rooted in deep insecurity.
Yeah, exactly.
And I knew I was insecure. That much I knew, you know, because I was trying to prove myself to the world. I'm going to be a real estate entrepreneur. I'm going to show the world like how smart and successful I am. And I'm a musician. I'm going to get on stage and show you like how, you know, great I am at performing and music and whatever. Right. But it was all, you know, it was just like a big front, right? for my insecurities, which sounds kind of crazy because people would think like, oh, I'm way too nervous or shy to get on stage, right? But you can be on stage in front of people and like putting on a big show and still like not like yourself at all.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
Why do
and
so many musicians have drug problems, right?
exactly, exactly. You know, one of the things I'd point out was the way you were living your life, how you describe it, attracted your partner to you, who fell in love with you for the man that you were at that point. So I'm assuming you're still married now.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
married, still
Yeah.
married. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, a year after I was diagnosed, I had to go back to the hospital. And I was back in the hospital, and this time I was holding a beautiful baby girl in my
High
arms.
five, man. High five. Yes. Yeah.
And
So, yes.
it was just the most wonderful, miraculous moment, right? To become a
Yes.
dad.
Yes.
And 1 year after a cancer diagnosis.
Yes.
And so I know we only have a few more minutes, but the spoiler alert, I got well, right? What I did was I just adopted a hardcore, radical, um, massive action plan to change my life. I didn't get any help on the internet. It wasn't helpful, but I was just reading book after book after book and just trying to piece together all the information I could about health and healing, nutrition, and anything I could do to help myself. And I really just laid my life on the table and looked at it, right? I took a hard analysis of my life and I asked myself, what in my life is of value and what is not?
Yeah.
And anything that's not of value, that's not helping me, that could be promoting disease, it's got to go.
Yeah.
It's got to go. And so I went through a radical transformation, and I started catching myself, my thoughts, right? I was catching myself when I was negative, when I was critical, when I was envious, when I was judgmental, right? When I was talking down to myself, I would catch it and I would interrupt it. And I would say, wait, I don't have to think this way, right? Because our thoughts are a choice. We can choose to think positively or negatively. It's always a choice. And guess what? Thinking negatively is easy. And a lot of us do it by default, but you don't have to.
Yes.
So I did, just did a lot of soul searching, did a lot of praying, got really, really deep in my spiritual life and in my faith because I was alone, man. I was hacking my way through the jungle in the dark. And it was like, God, I need, there were days when I was afraid, I was worried. I was afraid. Is it coming back? Am I getting worse? Like what's going to happen? Like, what if this fails? What if I die a fool? I struggled with those thoughts and those emotions constantly. And so I was just constantly giving them to God, just saying like, I trust you. I trust you. Like, I'm just going to give you my fear, right? Yeah. Giving you my fear. And so I worked through that. I just worked through that process, and day in, day out, I just kept overdosing on nutrition. That was this idea that stuck in my mind. If I'm not going to do chemo, again, I'm not telling people not to do chemo. It's everybody has their own choice. But to me, I said, if I'm not going to do chemo, I'm going to overdose on nutrition. I'm going to put so much vitamins, minerals, enzymes, antioxidants, phytonutrients into my body that it has to heal. Right? It's got to heal. I'm going to give it like an abundance, right? This was an abundance mentality. And it wasn't like, I got to kill this cancer, right? It was, I've got to heal my body.
Yes.
Right.
Very,
it was a
very important point. Very important point.
Thank you.
Is the differentiation.
Yeah. Because the cancer industry is all about just killing your cancer.
Right. Right.
And you can kill cancer all day long. You can poison it, you can burn it, you can cut it off. But if you don't change the internal terrain, you're going to grow more tumors. Your body is either going to be a place that is hospitable to cancer growth or inhospitable. It's either friendly or it's unfriendly, right? Unfriendly means you got a really strong immune system, right? And your detoxification pathways are open and flowing, right? And so you've just cleaned out all the gunk. And so, and you're constantly supplying your body with the fuel and firepower that it needs to repair and regenerate and detoxify and heal. So like, I'm just thinking about all these things and doing as much as I can every day. And guess what? I just got progressively better and better. I had blood work and CT scans. And before I knew it, it had been 5 years. And then around, 6.5 year mark, I was like, man, I guess maybe I should start a blog or something. Like, maybe I could be helpful and encourage people and like just show them what I did. I know there's got to be people out there that think the way I do, that are looking for these kind of answers. And there was nothing really online about it at that time. There weren't, Chris Carr was out there. Some of you know who Chris Carr is, but there wasn't much else. And so I was like, man, I got to do this. And little did I know, people just would come out of the woodwork. As soon as I started talking about healing and natural therapies and non-toxic therapies and like just how to help yourself heal, people just started sending me messages. Can we talk? Can we get on the phone? Can we Skype? Like, I love what you're doing. Like, and so I just started coaching people one-on-one and just trying to help them navigate cancer treatment, help them change their life, help them do things that could support their body's ability to heal. And it just grew and grew and grew. And eventually my audience got so big and the demand got to be so much that I was like, this is crazy. I can't even talk. There's no way I can talk to everybody. Like, I'm getting more messages than I ever, in one day than I would get in a month.
Yes.
And so I was like, okay, all right, I got to put it on the course. Like, let's put it in the course. And the course is called Square One, the Square One Healing Cancer Coaching Program. Because what I did was I just took what I would teach someone in 10 one-on-one calls, right? And put it in 10 modules in the course. And so it covers everything that I've touched on a lot of it with you, but like mindset and attitude, why you have cancer, understanding the causes so you can remove them from your life, the most powerful anti-cancer foods, detoxification, exercise, rest, supplementation, stress, and getting stress, identifying and eliminating stress from your life. I talk about my faith journey in there. And then I even talk about tests that you can use to monitor your progress, just understanding cancer testing. So that's what's in the Square One course. The whole thing's free online for the next 10 days. It's normally a paid program, but once a year, we just put it online for free to serve the world. Anybody can tune in. They just click the link, sign up. You don't have to put in your credit card or anything like that. You just name an email, and then every day we'll send you a new module for you to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just fabulous. It is really just fabulous. Chris, there are so many great comments coming in, just high-fiving you and thanking you for sharing your story. This one just came a moment ago from Anna. It says, Chris, you are such a good example to so many people, and you are tough. Yes, you stepped on my obese toes. Generally, so many of us are not as committed as you or don't have the resolution to be consistent. And I know that is what it takes to win this battle to be healthy in an unhealthy world. I haven't given up. I continue to try, and I make continued strides, baby steps. And some of these baby steps are because of your programs. And, well, crap. Now Dr. Tom O'Bryan just hit me hard with that Twinkie comment. And do I want to live? Thanks for continuing to motivate others who are stumbling and desire more out of our lives.
Wow, man, that's can I respond to that?
Yeah, of course.
I just want to say, I mean, that's an amazing comment. And don't wait until you're facing cancer to change your life and to take your health seriously. I promise you, it's not worth it, right? The Twinkies are not worth cancer, right? There is no cheeseburger, pizza, junk food, ice cream bucket that's worth it. I promise you that. And I know it's sometimes it's hard to get motivated when you're not facing a chronic disease. And in some ways it was easy for me because it was like life or death, right? So for me, it was like, what do you mean? It'd be crazy to not do this, right? But I just want to encourage you, like, you can do it. Your choices every day matter. And there's a snowball effect. There's a momentum that happens in the healing process when you just stay consistent. Just stay consistent. I hope you'll tune into Square One, because I'll just teach you exactly what I did, and you can just make these radical changes to your life, and you'll be amazed. I mean, we have so many awesome testimonials now, people that have reversed diabetes, heart disease, cancers. That's the whole point. Their blood work's improving, their tumors are shrinking, their scans are clear. Like, you'll see the video testimonials when you watch the course too. It's just really exciting, man. I can talk for hours. Thanks for the opportunity to talk and to share my story with your audience.
Oh my gosh. Well, there's two things I'd like to say here. The first is, Chris Wark's program is excellent, and once a year he makes it available for free. So the link is there. Everyone, click on it. If you watch just one episode, great. Hopefully it impacts wonderfully on your life. The second thing is, Chris, what touches me is that you speak from your heart. You are authentic. You're not a salesman. You're not trying to sell something. You're just giving to the world. You're paying it forward, and that's your reputation out there amongst our peers. We just had our big event, Mindshare, just this last weekend of JJ Virgin's Mindshare. The 500 people there, and the comments about Chris are always the same. What a great guy! He's just so authentic, or he's so real, and everyone thinks about you that way. And I do also, and which is why this whole episode, this entire hour, this entire show is your story, is because it's so empowering to hear from your heart that you had to stand against everyone you knew, every institution that you've always thought were the gods, and even your wife, and you had to follow your heart to live. And that's true for all of us. Sometimes it ain't easy. It ain't easy what we have to go through, folks. I just came home. I've been gone for 7 weeks, and I had a friend staying at the house while I was gone, and I came home. What did I find in the freezer this morning but my very, very favorite chocolate coconut ice cream? And I immediately said, "Oh, that's really great. Oh man, I haven't had that in a long." No. And it went in the garbage, because I don't want the temptation, and it's those little base hits, those little things that we do consistently every day that win the ball game. So for everyone on here today, please take a look at Chris's program. Watch the first 5 minutes of the first one. That's right. Click here and just take a look. And if you don't like it, turn it off. It's free, right? But it's there for you. So with that, Chris, I'm going to say thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and very proud to know you and to be friends and to carry your message out here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. It was an honor. I just appreciate you so much.